If you've ever been in a relationship where you feel stuck, where you love someone but you can't stand being around them, or where every tiny conversation turns into a fight, then what I'm about to say might change the way you see everything. My name's not important. What matters is that 3 years ago, I sat at my kitchen table, looked at the woman I'd promised to spend my life with, and said the words you're never supposed to say. And when she responded, I thought my world was over. Turns out it was just starting. Let me rewind a bit. My wife and I had been married for about 7 years when things started going really wrong. And I'm not talking about the small stuff, like leaving dirty socks on the floor or forgetting to take out the trash. I'm talking about that deep, heavy silence that fills a room when two people have nothing left to say. We used to talk for hours. About nothing. About everything. We'd stay up late making fun of bad movies or planning trips we'd never take. But somewhere along the way, that stopped. And what replaced it was, well, nothing. Then nothing turned into resentment. You know that feeling when you're sitting right next to someone, but you feel completely alone? That was us. Every night was the same. I'd come home from work, she'd be on her phone. I'd sit on the couch, and we'd just exist in the same space like two ghosts. We weren't fighting. That's the scary part. Fighting at least means you still care enough to argue. We were just quiet. And in some ways, that quiet is worse than yelling. At least when you're yelling, there's still some fire left. We had nothing but cold ashes. I started staying late at work on purpose. Not because I had to, but because the thought of walking through that front door felt heavy. Like putting on a wet coat. She started going out with her friends more, which I told myself was fine. But really, I knew what was happening. We were building separate lives. And when you do that long enough, you start to wonder, why are we even doing this together? That question eats at you. It grows in the dark. And one night, after a particularly quiet dinner where the only sound was forks scraping plates, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. Here's the thing about marriage that nobody tells you. You can love someone and still be miserable. You can care about their happiness and still know, deep down, that you're not happy yourself. And that's where I was. I didn't hate her. Not even close. I just hated what we had become. So one night, I sat her down at that same kitchen table and I said it. I think we should get a divorce. I expected tears. I expected screaming. I expected her to throw something at my head or beg me to change my mind. I had rehearsed every possible reaction in my head 100 times. But here's what I didn't expect. She looked at me, not with anger, not with sadness. She looked at me like she had been waiting for me to say those words for months. And then she said, "Okay," just one word, "Okay," like I had asked her to pass the salt. Like I had just suggested we try a new restaurant for dinner. That "okay" hit me harder than any scream ever could. Because in that single word, I heard everything. I heard the exhaustion. I heard the years of quiet suffering. I heard her saying, "Yeah, you're right. This is over." And for about 10 seconds, I felt complete and total relief. I thought, finally, the Band-Aid is ripped off. Finally, we can stop pretending. But then something strange happened. She didn't get up. She didn't start packing her bags. She just sat there, and then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Before we do this, can I ask you one question?" I nodded. She said, "When did you stop fighting for us?" And I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I couldn't point to one day or one fight. It wasn't like a light switch that just turned off. It was more like a leak. A slow drip of small moments where we chose being right over being happy, where we chose our phones over each other, where we chose sleep over staying up to talk. That question broke me open in a way the divorce conversation didn't, because I realized something horrible. I hadn't just fallen out of love. I had stopped trying. And so had she. We had both quietly, secretly, given up on each other without ever saying the words out loud. So I asked her the same question. When did you stop fighting? And she started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. She said, I stopped fighting the day you stopped looking at me. I didn't even realize I had done that. But she was right. Somewhere along the way, I stopped really seeing her. I saw her as a roommate, as a problem to be managed, as a source of frustration. But I stopped seeing her as the person I once couldn't wait to come home to. And that's when we had the most honest conversation of our entire marriage. For the first time in years, we weren't talking about bills or chores or whose turn it was to pick up groceries. We were talking about us. Really talking. We stayed up until 3 a.m, just sitting at that kitchen table, saying all the things we had been too scared to say. She told me she felt invisible. I told her I felt like a failure. She told me she missed the way I used to make her laugh. I told her I missed the way she used to look at me like I was her favorite person in the world. And here's the crazy part. The more we talked, the more we realized something. Neither of us actually wanted a divorce. We wanted the pain to stop. We wanted the loneliness to end. But we had both convinced ourselves that the only way out was to burn the whole thing down. So we made a deal. Instead of calling a lawyer, we decided to call a timeout. A real one. Not a separation where we see other people or start dividing up our stuff. But a pause. We agreed to take divorce off the table for 60 days. And in those 60 days, we had one rule. We had to be completely, brutally honest with each other. No more nice lies. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. If something bothered us, we had to say it out loud before the sun went down. No storing up resentment like old newspapers. And let me tell you, the first 2 weeks were rough. Really rough. We said things that hurt. We brought up old wounds that we had been ignoring for years. There were fights. There were tears. There were moments where I thought, nope, this was a mistake. We should have just gotten a divorce. But then something started to shift. All that honesty, all those ugly conversations, they started to clear the air. It's like we had been living in a house filled with smoke, and we finally opened all the windows. It was uncomfortable at first, but slowly we could breathe again. We started remembering why we got married in the first place. Not the big romantic reasons, but the small ones. The way she laughs at her own jokes before she even finishes telling them. The way I can't watch a movie without pausing it to explain the plot, even though she already understands it. We started dating each other again. Not fancy dates, but real ones. We took walks without our phones. We cooked dinner together like we used to. We sat on the porch and just talked about nothing, the way we did when we first fell in love. And here's the thing I didn't expect. Asking for a divorce didn't end our marriage. It saved it, because it forced us to stop pretending. It forced us to look at the train wreck we had created and finally admit that we were the ones driving it into the wall. Most people wait until it's too late. They wait until the resentment has turned into hate. They wait until one person has already checked out emotionally, or worse, found someone else. But we got lucky. We had our crisis right at the moment when there was still something left to save. Now I'm not telling you this story to brag. I'm telling you because I know there are so many people out there right now, sitting in their own quiet houses, feeling that same loneliness. You love your partner, but you don't like them. You want to fix things, but you don't know how. Or maybe you've already had the divorce conversation in your head 100 times, but you're too scared to say it out loud. Here's what I learned. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And if you're still fighting, if you're still angry, If you still care enough to be hurt by what they do or don't do, then there's still something there. The real danger isn't conflict. The real danger is when you stop caring enough to even argue. So what's the takeaway from all this? If you're in a relationship that feels broken, don't wait until you're both ghosts living in the same house. Have the hard conversation now. Not the fake one where you blame each other,